Right, welcome. There's some additional news on FTX that I thought would be worthwhile covering as more kind of comes to light, and there seems to be the spread of contagion with everything that's happened with FTX, and you know, it's been an interesting thing to basically watch, and there are certainly some videos on YouTube that go into the detail of it even more. But I do want to just highlight a few things that I've seen because now we have the likes of Genesis Trading and possibly Gemini that may be impacted by this. We already know that BlockFi are pretty much heading towards bankruptcy. I'm just going to share this with you very quickly here because this was something from that's on Investopedia at the minute around BlockFi. BlockFi were already in a little bit of liquidity problems, and they were going to be getting a line of credit really from FTX for $400 million. And since FTX is basically gone, that puts BlockFi at risk. So again, speaking about this is just it feels as though when a bubble bursts, the reality of things makes more sense. And again, I'm so glad that I didn't do anything with, BlockFi as a conversation that we had sort of last year, because I don't know, it just didn't feel right at the time. But it looks like BlockFi is going to be one. We definitely have had Genesis today on their Twitter, basically saying, and you can go and read this entire thread. Their account is at Genesis Trading. And what they're basically saying here is, I'm going to read this one for you here. Our number one priority is to serve our clients and preserve their assets. Therefore, in consultation with our professional financial advisors and counsel, so that will be legal counsel, we've taken the difficult decision to temporarily suspend redemptions and new loans or originations in the lending business. So they're saying temporarily here, but it just basically means that you can't make any withdrawals from this trading company at the moment working in the crypto space. And again, this is because, and they cite directly the impact that FTX has had. However, as they're saying here, FTX has created unprecedented market turmoil, resulting in abnormal withdrawal requests and have exceeded our current liquidity. I mean, liquidity problems aren't necessarily bad. It's when you get into the position where you're risking insolvency that you start to really be concerned for a company. But it's just everything's so interconnected now, and I don't blame people for literally trying to get their money out of exchanges and off with providers into cold storage. And I think that's probably what everyone is going to continue to do now. If you've got Bitcoin, get it into cold storage. If you've got Ethereum, get it into cold storage. Whatever coin that you've basically got, you're going to try and get it into cold storage now, because ultimately that's the only way that you know that you're going to be able to maintain the ownership of your coins, and therefore your money as an extension of that. And it's pretty unfortunate, really, to be honest, because this is the kind of stuff that you just wouldn't really expect to see in normal circumstances, but because things are interconnected, here we are. And I think I mentioned this. I was on a live on Instagram yesterday. The unfortunate reality is that because you have even the likes of crypto.com, right? So they published uh, their balance sheet. So what assets they basically hold. So number one was Bitcoin, but they have 20% of their assets in Shiba Inu. I mean, why that's not Ethereum? They will obviously have a reason for it. But Shiba Inu is the second biggest coin that they hold. And for many people, that is deeply, deeply concerning, because why Shiba Inu? Like I said, they must have reasons for it, but why Shiba Inu specifically? We don't know. And what we do know is we're not going to know the full extent. CZ from Binance was actually speaking, and he was saying that he thinks that there will be a lot of projects that were being worked upon that will now be in trouble because of obviously the fallout with FTX. And what he's basically proposing is potentially funding those projects, obviously for part ownership, I would imagine. He's not going to do it for free. But what that actually looks like, we don't know. And it's what's the impact to the wider crypto space? What does that do for the projects that are doing really, really good work, but as a byproduct of FTX collapsing, find themselves in really, really difficult positions because they may well have had a lot of their own liquidity funds in FTX. And with FTX going, they've also lost their funding and their assets as well. I don't think we know the full extent of this just yet. And I think it will take a while for it to really wash through. But, I was looking at I have to share this because this is actually quite something, and this tells you how bad things actually are. So this is SBF's Twitter. People are now calling him scam. What are people calling him now? Scam bankrupt Ford is what people are now calling him, which I think is really, really funny. This is his Twitter thread, right? And this, if you go and read this thread, it's really, really informative. But I want to just highlight one here. He was talking about, justifying the business and how he's looking to raise additional money. And it's like, he still honestly believes that he's going to be able to raise some money. And it's this one right here. So in the previous tweet in this thread, he talked about, the leverage positions and stuff like that. And here he's just saying, as it turns out, I was wrong. Leverage wasn't 5 billion, it was 13 billion. How can you run a company and not be aware of what leverage you are trading with or what leverage is being used, right? This is not like, I thought it was 5 billion, but actually it was 6 billion we were leveraged by. It's double, almost 3 times. And this goes back to what I was talking about in the other video the other day. You didn't have a board, right? So who's making the decisions and how do you come to a decision? That's the whole point of having a board, right? The role of a board within a business is to essentially, you all get together, you all decide, right, where's the direction of the business? What are the steps that we need to take there? How do we protect the business? What risks are there that the business potentially faces? And how do we get ahead of any issues if we know that there are going to be problems right now? You shrink wrap your business as much as possible whilst speculating to grow for the future. If you didn't have a board, that's why you wouldn't know that, the leverage is actually 13 billion and not 5 billion. It's absolutely crazy, if I'm completely honest. But this is the world that we find ourselves in right now. Denise is saying every exchange should have proof of reserves as a better minimum, as the bare minimum. It should be the standard. Yes, I would completely agree. And I said this maybe last week or so. I think if people don't, the idea of regulation, there are still people who are opposed to the idea of regulation, which I completely get, but I think it's still going to be necessary. And I think we got to the point where now it is going to come along. But I think one thing that the remaining providers, or at least exchanges, can do now is agree to business standards that will be, I guess, agreed upon mutually amongst themselves. That could be a point in those standards, and basically see those through, and evidence as well that it's being implemented and actually monitored, and there is some accountability within it as well. Because there's no point in having a business standard or standards that you say that you're going to adhere to if you have no accountability, you have no monitoring, you have no compliance for it. And I think it's going to be necessary, if I'm completely honest. But this is going to be interesting. It's going to be a movie one day, I'm pretty sure. I mean, imagine you think about The Big Short, right? The Big Short is amazing film. 2007, 2008, the two films that came out that stick out in my mind were Big Short number one, then Margin Call. I love Margin Call. The Big Short is great, but Margin Call's like it puts you in the middle of a company realizing that they've got bad debt and they do what they did, basically sold bad debt, knowing that it was bad debt, and knowing that by doing so, they were going to tarnish their reputation, or at least the traders who were selling were, but the business would continue and survive. And it's a really interesting look at the psychology of the industry and how they think and how they feel about their rights of what they can and can't do based on the facts either being disclosed or non-disclosed in the case of the company in Margin Call. It's very, very interesting. And if you haven't watched the film, you should definitely go watch it. It's eye-opening to say the least. I would like to think that some of those practices you couldn't get away with in 2022, but I think that might be a little bit of wishful thinking. I hope that we never get to a situation where those kind of things would actually arise, but you never know. It's a really, really interesting film, and I think that this will ultimately end up as a script in Hollywood. And once all of the facts kind of emerge, we'll get the full sense and scale of what's transpired to get us to this point. And whether you then need to have some kind of regulations or standards to, I don't necessarily believe that you should impede the interconnectivity of a sector, because that interconnectivity is really important for innovation and for growth and for just natural progression. But there are going to have to be some compliance measures in place to ensure that you couldn't, have two companies that are connected by the same person and then client money going from one business to another without any checks and without money being segregated. It's just, it's crazy in 2022. But there we go. Anyway, that's the news at the moment. Gemini also did actually tweet as well. They're just saying that, look, Gemini provides a lot of services to Genesis. So they're saying that, they will still be able to continue, but obviously Genesis provides them some of their yielding services. And at the moment, they're not going to be able to fulfill that. That's also on the Gemini Twitter page. Funny enough, I've got a wallet with Gemini, and I couldn't log in earlier. And just before I came up, I was like, that's maybe a little bit of a coincidence. But I have been able to log in since before I just came live here. So that is comforting, to say the least. But I've only got some basic attention token with them. Not a lot, really, to be fair. But then again, I might actually try and move that over to a cold storage. I'd have my Bitcoin I've got my Bitcoin all over the place, actually. I think majority of it's with eToro. I need to move that as well at some point. But guys, we are in interesting period right now. So we'll keep this monitored and see what happens in the news. From what I was hearing, he is going to be arrested, or at least he is being monitored by the police out in the Bahamas. So he is rumored to be in cuffs in the next few days. I know on previous videos, looking at the comment section, people are like, listen, he's been funding the Democrats in the States. He's not ending up in jail, especially when you consider who his parents are as well. And that makes this whole thing so much more convoluted and questionable, right? His mum and his dad are very, very influential. He is the second biggest donor to the Democratic Party in America. So what does donating $40 million to a political party get you in favors and influence? Because I can guarantee you right now that there would have been a conversation around, if you ever need me, let me know. And if you ever need anything, pick up the phone. This will be the time where he'll be picking up the phone. And the question is going to be, who's going to pick up? And what would the favor that he asked for be? because when you're donating $40 million to a political party, you bet you're buying yourself influence. And influence can go a very, 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 very long way. So again, watch this space. See if he ends up in cuffs in the next day or two. I mean, he should be in the nick already, right? But he's still got access to his Twitter account, and he's still able to tweet all this stuff literally up to about 34 minutes ago. It's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers. But there you go. To be a billionaire. Anyway, guys, thank you. Cheers. I'll catch you later on.